By the year 2050, the United Nations expects the world will hold about 9.6 billion people, an increase from today's population of about 7.2 billion. However, shifts in fertility rates could have a huge impact, skewing the number by more than a billion above or below the estimate. The UN also expects India to surpass China as the world's most populous country around 2028, less than 15 years in the future. To meet the demands of more than 9 billion people, the UN says the world will need to produce 70% more food. As the world's current largest nation, China imported $30 billion worth of agricultural goods from the U.S. alone in 2012, making the United States its largest ag supplier. The U.S. is also China's #1 provider of soybeans, supplying 44% of the total share in 2012. The question for the future is if that success could be replicated in other growing nations. At December's Omaha Ag Outlook at the Old Market Embassy Suites, we talked with Iowa State Extension's farm management specialist Kelvin Leibold about whether a large population increase means more business for U.S. ag goods.
Well, that's the debate that's going on, I think, as we look at some of the issues. First of all, I'm not sure that the 9 billion is actually a given. For example, the Gates Foundation has started to look at birth control in Africa, which is a topic they didn't want to touch before. And as these societies get more wealthy, as was in the United States, we did what? We cut the number of children down dramatically when the demand for labor and the cost of raising children went up. So we may not see that population growth.
So in the U.S., if there was a huge crop, and this year there was a good crop, as you mentioned, on the outskirts, maybe not so much, maybe in Iowa where they had some problems. Your concern is that if there was a huge crop, there might be a problem with trying to find markets for it.
Yeah, I think the issue is on both what's the short run look like, what's the intermediate, and what's the long term look like. The short run here, we've gone through an unprecedented year of 5 years of great prices, increased world demand, driven in part by the biofuels, by export demand. Now, what's the next 5 going to bring? We've had some weather problems around the world. We put 40% of the corn into ethanol. When I look at that and I start thinking about, okay, the next 5 years we have a really good crop, we get that trend line yield the crop insurance people have been talking about, we're going to have a lot of corn laying around here, and are we going to be able to ramp up quick enough? Oh sure, we'll have a few more chicken plants, we'll feed some chickens, but they're not going to eat that much. Are we going to build any new ethanol plants? I don't think in today's environment we are. So those are the questions I have. So as corn falls below that $4 number, does it stay there very long? Or does demand actually increase in the hog industry and the other feed industries pick up the slack?
Let's talk about some of the international customers. China's a big one right now. They buy a lot of pork, they buy a lot of soybean meal. Is that something that continues going forward?
Oh, I think definitely that you're going to see a pretty significant shift of that nature. Keep going there. But keep in mind with corn, China's the world's second largest producer. What's their national corn yield? Well, it's only about 90 bushel an acre. Could they ramp that up? Sure they could. They could ramp it up with more fertilizer subsidies, more acres. Oh, they could try to work out a deal with genetic companies and bring in new seed technology. Let the big 3 boys come in and play in their arena, and they turn around and do what? They put 25 bushel an acre yield increase in place. That'll put them what? Make them an exporter of corn, not an importer.
Do you think that's likely?
I don't think that's real likely in the short run. Long term, I think yes. They will see a substantial increase in their yields in their country because they'll be forced to.
What role could India play? It's a country that's growing very quickly as well.
Of course, India has a lot of population growth. I think it has a growing middle class. Is that sustainable? Currently, India doesn't import very much. So if they started to import even a little bit of grain, wheat or corn, soybeans, it would have a pretty important impact on the marketplace. That's assuming that places like Russia and Ukraine don't start flooding the market with the little exports of those as well.
Those countries are obviously relevant when it comes to wheat from the U.S. as well, right?
Yeah, we started with high corn prices because we had a national wheat shortage, not because we had a global wheat shortage, not a global corn shortage. And again, they can kind of top things off a little bit with wheat. But what I'm more concerned about is this gradual shift. Just as the United States has shifted away from wheat to corn and soybeans, so are the Soviet Union and Ukraine and other former Soviet Union countries. They're shifting more corn and more soybeans into their rotations as well. Why? Because of the prices and the profits. And technically they're located next to the Black Sea. which makes a short hop to places like Egypt or Iran.
Let's talk about Brazil from the scope of soybeans. Will there be this constant battle between the U.S. produces a crop and they have to get it to market before Brazil produces an even bigger crop?
Yeah, I mean, the world realizes that there's two suppliers now, and they're about 6 months apart in their supply system. I can remember the days when we used to talk about Argentina and Brazil together equaling the U.S. soybean crop. Today we're talking about Brazil and the U.S. basically being neck and neck here the way it looks for the next several years on soybean production. So yeah, it is a major factor. Brazil has increased soybean production and the United States has increased soybean production. It's not just them, we both have, along with a few other places around the world.
Could they go more so though in the future? Could Brazil increase faster in that area than the U.S.?
Well, Brazil has got the land conversion issue.
Yeah.
And so how much of this pasture they want to pull out into the soybeans and how economical is it for them to do that. A big factor in Brazil is infrastructure. Do we see an outside player come in and build a good railroad for them? Do we see further investment in their ports so they can load ships faster and quicker and more efficiently? Those are the things that really I think is going to drive Brazil's future.